got Wi-Fi?
I don't know what's going on in here. It's looking like I got it. Then it
Yeah,
ain't
get down
populated.
there about 2:30. Get that, get these things done.
Oh yeah, I was here like two.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't like to be catching this close. Yeah, the Chiefs will pull this one out, but defense ain't been doing that good. I don't know why they didn't go crazy. Oh, it does? I think that's Edge don't work with a lot of stuff. The Microsoft stuff. Yeah, they got another touchdown. Yeah. Yeah, you can't go live on even without OBS on Edge. That Windows 10 thing. I don't know why this Microsoft wasn't trying to figure out a way to fix that. So I guess they don't care. And I haven't tried YouTube on Microsoft Edge. But I know you don't even get the live thing show up that you can go live on Microsoft. And I don't know about Internet Explorer. Well, yeah, but I know that with Microsoft Edge, you don't do nothing.
Make the system in here. Hold up the sheet. How many more minutes I gotta take? I got two more to move over. I'll do this last one and I should be ready.
some get back. Way back. Way back. Back. Down with your friend. That ain't right.
It still ain't transferred over yet. What the hell is going on?
Any damn thing for me. Yeah. Didn't change. Tell me and that's a fact. Be ready for the big payback.
Switch off of y'all and switch back on mine. It says that changes it. What's going on, Kansas City? You now listening to What's Real Talk, 98.5 KUAW. The call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. And if you're looking at this on my Facebook feed, please go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 Facebook page because you're going to have a much better integrated audio and video experience. So I'm going to jump right into it because we're a couple minutes late getting the show kicked off today, and it feels good to be back on, man. It's been a minute, man. It's been a minute since we've been on here. So as we got this uploading, obviously we working on the internet. I'm gonna hit you with the Capitol update from September the 20th, and then I'm gonna hit you with one more for the week that just passed. And again, I'm doing this update because we've been off for the last couple of weeks. Senate passes drug court, STEM education bills. The Senate on September 14th granted final approval to two bills. This is during special session. To two bills for which the governor called a special legislative session for lawmakers to pass. One bill expands Missouri's system of specialized treatment courts, while the other promotes science, technology, engineering, in mathematics STEM. So one is your drug court, specialized treatment course. The other is STEM. Although the passage of these bills essentially brought the session, which began September the 10th, to a close, the session didn't formally end until September the 19th, when House and Senate leaders took a procedural actions necessarily to officially send the bills to the new governor, Governor Mike Parson, to be signed into law. Parson is expected to take action on the measures in the upcoming days. House Bill 2, which the Senate passed 29-0, expands treatment courts to all Missouri counties and refines standards of their operation. The measure builds on the work opined by Senator Clara McCaskill, who was instrumental in developing and implementing Missouri's first drug courts, and that was back in 1993 while she served as the Jackson County prosecutor. The Senate also voted 28-1 in favor of House Bill 3, which promoted STEM education. This is a funny bill to me. It's funny to me because as an elected Democrat out of Kansas City, I supported the bill. I noticed a lot of Democrats had issues with the STEM bill because it alters some of the funding or alter the requirements of kids to take certain core classes. They can opt out for STEM. Despite the lopsided vote, some lawmakers expressed concern about the provision of the bill. This is the provision I was talking about right here. The provision of the bill allowing high school students to substitute computer science courses in place of mathematics courses, potentially leaving them unable to meet the minimum math requirements needed for college admission. So this is what we heard from some of my colleagues, that they thought that children was going to opt out of core classes and just take the STEM. I was 100% comfortable with it, and particularly coming out of public education and knowing that I didn't get the type of education, and particularly in math, that I wanted or that I needed. And by having electives and alternative courses in which children can advance themselves, I believe this is how we change the face of oppression, and particularly when it comes to so-called minority education. Still on the 20th update. Court fights races to keep ethnic measures off the ballot. Now, I'm going to hit this in a couple times. This is one of the initiatives that's going to be on the ballot. We're actually going to talk about this today. A Cole County judge on September the 14th ordered a proposed constitutional amendment overhauling Missouri legislative redistricting procedures and imposing new regulations on lawmakers to be removed from the November 6th statewide ballot. Days later, however, an appellate court issued a stay keeping the measure, and this is Amendment 2, on the ballot, at least at this time, so it should be on there for the election. Also, pardons, pools, and reappoint state education board pick. This is going to be part of the segment where we come back when we talk about Governor Parsons pulling his education pick and then reappointing the persons to the state education board. A couple weeks ago on social media, I highlighted that Senator Jamila Nasheed did a good job of blocking the person that he was trying to appoint on the education board. But when we talk about political appointees, judges, people that sit over departments, even Kavanaugh, we're talking about who we elect, who we don't elect, and then who has access to overtly change things beyond the person that we elected. So we need to be cautious about who we're electing, who we're putting in these seats, because these people have the ability to appoint people, whether that's the governor or the president. This is the last update before I get into the election things that we have coming on. This update is from the week of the 27th, and this goes back to that ballot initiative I was just talking about. Clean Missouri Amendment will stay on the November 6th ballot. A 3-judge panel of the Missouri Court of Appeals, and we have the appeals, one of the appeals judges, 2 of the appeals judges will be up for election this November. Unanimously ruled on September 21st that a proposed constitutional amendment overhauling Missouri legislative redistricting process, limiting the influences of lobbyists on lawmakers and making legislative records and proceedings more open to the public scrutiny, doesn't violate constitutional rules for ballot measures, and is clear to go on the November 6th statewide ballot. What they was talking about when they was talking about the conflict or the potential conflict with constitutional language, they're talking about not having a single subject for people to vote on. So this amendment has everything in it from, again, redistricting processes to limiting the lobbyist gifts, and when former employees and former legislators can actually become lobbyists. So it has more than one subject in there. It was 2 separate lawsuits filed on behalf of the Missouri Republican Party establishment and the other by the GOP, Lime, Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Both of these initiatives sought to block the amendment from being on the ballot. The governor asked the legislature to reform housing credits. This will happen next session. Governor Mike Parsons on September the 24th asked lawmakers to make a top priority of reforming Missouri's controversial and costly low-income housing tax credit program. This is extremely dangerous language when you hear this. Controversial and costly low-income housing tax credit program in next year's legislative session. Parsons also appointed 2 new members of the Missouri House and Development Commission, the panel that oversees the program that last year issued $140 million in state credits dealing with utility programs. We are confident in the legislature's ability to develop tax credit reform. This is the governor. We are confident in the legislature's ability to develop tax credit reforms that address housing needs while ensuring greater accountability and increased return on the investment of taxpayer dollars. Parsons said in a news release, as a member of the commission, I am committed to considering next federal tax credit applications, but until substantial reforms are enacted, state tax credits will not be issued. Dig it again. As a member of the commission, I am committed to considering current federal tax credit applications, but until substantial reforms are enacted, state tax credits will not, I repeat, not be issued. The call for reform and opposition for ensuring the credits until that happens marks a sharp change in position for Parsons. As an MHDC member, while Lieutenant Governor Parsons cast one of just 2 dissenting votes when the commission spiked the program in November of 2017. At the time, Parsons told the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that he should be up to the legislature to eliminate. That's how they wrote it, man.
They didn't say that word.
Nah, they actually that it should be up to the legislature to eliminate the LIHTC program, not the commission. That had to be that's definitely a typo error. Yeah, that's kind of disturbing. But yeah, we got a lot going on, man. A lot transpiring. I want to hit everybody with the updates before I get into what we have coming up on the ballot initiative. Before we do that, because we have 3 we have 3 propositions. One's a constitutional proposition, but I want to update people on what's going on at Crossroads Correctional Facility before we get into the ballot initiatives. I don't know who's been following, who hasn't been following. We have over 38 members, House and Senate members that signed up to a letter to bring the Department of Justice in to investigate not only Crossroads Correctional Facility, but the entire gambit of Missouri corrections. Since then, we've seen Crossroads start walking down some of the lockdown procedures, such as restoring hot meals once a day, yes, not 3 times a day, extending the out time for inmates to be able to walk in and out of the cell, giving them more freedom inside of the cell blocks, sending phone calls. You got anything you want to throw in there, Charles?
Visitation's been restored. Increasing recreation for outdoors recreation and law library. Medical has increased as far as responding to the medical request forms. From my understanding, with a phone call that I received from one offender last week, one housing unit has no offenders in it. They took a whole wing in that one housing unit and staffed it with medical staff just to catch up on the medical request forms that they had been receiving from offenders. I get daily phone calls to keep us updated on what's been transpiring there. As you stated already, the walk down process, my whole issue still there. If you can cook 1 meal, why you can't cook 3? I'm still stuck right there. If you can prepare 1 meal that's hot, why you can't do 3?
Well, they can do 3. Yeah. And I want to do a personal disclosure. For anybody that needs to contact my office, please send me an email. If I've been slow in returning your phone calls, your emails, it's because I'm in the office by myself right now. So, and I don't like using the phone in the first place. So that's creating a bigger issue for me than what I'm used to. But send me your emails. I am still on top of the issue. You listening to What's Real, Real Talk, 98.5 KUAW. Again, the call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. And if you're listening to this on my Facebook feed, please go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 Facebook page, and you're going to have an integrated video and audio experience. So before we jump into this, though, bro, I want to hit you with this because we got election coming up November the 6th. Now, I've been on my Facebook feed. I've been on Twitter. I always mess that word up. I've been on Instagram, right? I've been seeing a lot of people talk about Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh this, Kavanaugh that. The Republicans aren't listening to women, this, and that. And I'm not saying that to be dismissive. I'm saying that to say this. In the political process, we vote on these folks, right?
Right.
Not Kavanaugh, not the appointees, but we
Correct.
vote on the people that select the appointees.
Correct.
So if we're not engaged in the political process, we're going to get people that are one-sided.
That's true.
And this is what we're
Sure.
seeing in the Kavanaugh. If I was President Trump and I was facing an impeachment process and a whole bunch of other legal things that probably was going to come before the Supreme Court, I would do everything I could to get a ringer in that Supreme Court. That way, when it comes over there, I'm more likely to get a favorable ruling.
He's got two now.
I know you got two.
He got two of them now.
Now, and I'm not saying that to justify anything that we've seen. I said that to bring us to what we have going on November the 6th that people aren't paying attention to. So we've been complaining about Kavanaugh, what he's going to do, and I think he could do some horrific things on the court because they have Roe v. Wade coming up and a couple other sensitive issues, and he's already stated during the confirmation process that this is going to be a long, I'm paraphrasing, I'm messing up a little bit. This is going to be a long, vengeful process since y'all want to do me in. But we got 16 judges here in Kansas City that we can actually decide if they should be on the bench or not. And this brings us back to Kavanaugh and what's happening at the Supreme Court, because even though he's at the Supreme Court, and hopefully nobody that's watching this will have to deal with the Supreme Court, unless it's, like a land-breaking case where we're trying to deconstruct the oppression that's been happening in the corrections institution or racism or something like that. If we don't have to go to the Supreme Court, hopefully our guests won't go there. But you probably will go in front of these 16 judges here in Kansas City at some point. So we have 16 judges running or that's on the ballot to be reappointed. Excuse me, not running. We have 2 Missouri Supreme Court judges on there. Now this becomes extremely important when you talk about this Missouri state law. We have a constitutional amendment that's going to be voted on this November. Well, these Supreme Court justices is the highest court in Missouri. So we need to know who's running for Missouri Supreme Court justice if we want that Supreme Court justice to be retained, because everything doesn't hit the feds.
That's true.
A lot of stuff does. When it hits the feds, it hits the feds. But it's going to hit Missouri Supreme Court before it hits the feds. And if we're worried about Kavanaugh, then we definitely should be worried about Missouri Supreme Court, because we're going to see them first. We also have 1 appeals judge on there. Now, this becomes extremely important when anybody dealing with corrections, anybody dealing with the criminal justice arena, anybody dealing with what they consider a bad ruling or a ruling that they don't like, it's going to go to the appeals court. We got 1 judge on there. Most people aren't paying attention. We also have 13 division judges up for election this year. Now, these are the people that you're going to see when you got code violations, when you got traffic tickets, when you have municipal issues. We need to know who's running. We need to be engaged. And then we need to purge judges that have been overly vindictive. And you can see this, and I'll give you an example, in Kansas City's housing program. So you will see an imbalance in individuals that are fined, their economic status of the individuals that are fined, and then businesses and owners of property that is not being taken care of that are not fined.
They're not,
Right? So you see a drastic imbalance. And I'm not telling people to go down there and vote the judge out. I'm just saying
But
you should know who is where. And we should be engaged. You got anything you want to throw on the judges?
I really haven't been. I'm glad you brought that up, because we get so focused on just our council that we forget about the judges that are there, appellate judges, and et cetera. We just focus right here with the city. That was a good issue that you brought up about the other judges.
I mean, I had to hit them with it.
Yes.
And again, you listen to What's Real, Real Talk, 98.5. The call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. The Facebook page is KUAW, LPFM 98.5. And again, you listen to What's Real, Real Talk. So now I'm going to talk about some things that are probably a little bit more attention-grabbing for people, but you still need to know what's going on. Because I read the ballot, and I have the ballot in front of me, and when I read it, I was like, it's pretty interesting, but also not, what's the word I want to use? Not informative when I read it. So I get an oversight, but I don't really get the details of what it's going to do. So the first constitutional amendment that we got coming up, so the Missouri Constitution, this is a constitutional amendment, this is a big boy right here. So the Missouri Constitution be amended to change process and criteria for redrawing state legislative districts during reappointment, change limits on campaign contributions that candidates for state legislator can accept from individuals or entities, establish a limit on gifts that state legislators and their employees can accept from paid lobbyists, prohibit state legislators and their employees from serving as paid lobbyists for a period of time, prohibit political fundraising by candidates for the members of state legislature on state property, and require legislative records and proceedings to be open to the public. Now, state governmental entities estimate annual operating costs may increase by only $189,000. Local government entities expect no fiscal impact. First thought on that. What's your first thought on that?
Oh, right. They put a whole bunch in that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a whole bunch in that one. So if I grab your attention in this one to vote, I got your vote for the rest of it.
And again, I'm going to hit you with it.
Yes.
Redistricting.
Yeah.
Changing the criteria for redistricting. Changing the amounts that state candidates can accept. Changing the time frame in which a former state legislator and their employee, meaning a chief of staff or something like that, can come back and run as a can come back as a lobbyist and prohibit political fundraising on state property. What you think about those? Good, bad, indifferent?
You got some indifference there for sure.
Now I'm gonna hit you with the real.
For real.
Without trying to persuade the way people vote. And again, as an elected official, I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but I am going to tell you something that is real and something that's not. So on here it says require legislative records and proceedings to be open to the public. That would assume that legislative meetings or proceedings are not open to the public.
Right.
They are.
Or they are
No,
already.
they are 100% open.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100.
Today.
So why is that thrown in there?
Yeah.
Because it catches your attention.
What
Right?
else is thrown?
When you see that, you be like, oh man, yes, I believe that we should have open records to legislative meetings. That's like a no-brainer. I would vote yes on that
Yes.
when I just read it. And again, I'm not telling people how to vote. The second thing on here, prohibit political fundraising by candidates for members of the state legislature on state property. Again,
It's already being done.
I mean, it actually is.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a no-brainer, right?
Right.
Currently, as a state representative, it would be illegal for me to hold a fundraiser on state property.
Correct.
I couldn't be at the Capitol and be like, hey,
Come on over.
meet me in office 101C, and we're going to do a fundraiser. No, I'm going to go to jail.
You can't do that.
Unless I'm grading, then I may get a sweet deal.
Right.
But I'm not grading, so I'll probably go to jail. All right. Prohibit state legislators and employees from serving as paid lobbyists for a period of time. Now, this is something that's been going back and forth in the legislative body for years. You have reps, senators, people involved in government that leave, that come back as lobbyists. My former assistant, Lucy Tran, she left to be a lobbyist. And she's not an evil lobbyist. She lobbies for the Alzheimer's people, right? So she actually lobbies for a group that to have substantial change is beneficial for everybody. Now, granted, I wasn't happy for losing Lucy, right? I couldn't pay the extra $15,000 or 16 or whatever they was giving her, but that would be something that I could see as harmful because personally, it would have benefited me because she wouldn't have been able to leave, but it also have been negative for anybody that has Alzheimer's because she's knocking it out the box as a legislative lobbyist
Lobbyist.
for the Alzheimer's people. And I wouldn't want her to come back. I mean, I would want her to come back, but I wouldn't want her to leave because she couldn't do it, right? Another thing that's in this same constitutional amendment, change the limits on campaign contributions that candidates for state legislature can accept. Right now, we're capped at $2,600, right? So that's neither here nor there. I don't care about that. But the big one, the one that I don't think people are going to pay attention to, and again, I'm not telling people how to vote, but the first one says change the process and criteria for redrawing state legislative districts during reappointment. So that means we're going to change the rubric of how we actually draw our legislative districts. So in layman's terms, what we're seeing is we're seeing national organizations that's coming here in Kansas, Missouri, and they're using Missouri as a test phase to say, hey, we want to change the way districts are drawn to make them more competitive.
Okay.
Now, Republicans are saying, we don't want this.
Yeah, leave it alone.
Democrats have been more open to the change. Myself, I'm a little bit fearful of the change. And I'm fearful of the change because I don't consider myself an African American. I consider myself a man of color or a black man. Right? You can call me either one of those. We're not gonna have no issue. So when I say this and I look at the rules of engagement, the rules of containment, and also the opportunities for authentic people to represent folks that's been marginalized, I see this is a very dangerous thing that can not necessarily benefit the community as a whole.
And that may be one reason why it's put in that bundle like that.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And I believe so because there's a lot of stuff on here that Democrats have been talking about, such as the campaign contributions or changing the time frame on which folks can come back and lobby and not lobby. None of that really means a whole lot to me because I think more black folks should be engaged in the lobbying arena, talking about our issues, going to state capitals, talking to governors and different folks of this nature, making sure that our stuff is coming out. And yes, Thurman, you're right. The housing court is a mess, and the housing court judge is up for retention on November the 6th. He's one of the 13 judges that's in the division. And I just seen that, so I wanted to throw that in.
Is
Can
that
you say his
Mr.
name?
Informative? Was that Mr. Informative?
Oh yeah, man, that's Thurman, man.
Mr.
For the
Informative.
people that don't know Thurman, man, he puts out a wealth of information.
There you
I
go.
can't keep up with those. All right, so the next constitutional amendment that we got coming up here, we're doing a whole bunch of stuff with the Constitution. Shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to allow the use of marijuana for medical purposes and create regulations, licensing, certification procedures for marijuana and marijuana facilities, impose a 4% tax on retail selling marijuana, and use funds from these taxes for health care services for military veterans by military veterans commissions, and to administer the program to license, certify, and regulate marijuana and marijuana facilities. This proposal is estimated to generate. And I've been working on my.
So, I
radio
got a question.
tape.
Hold on, wait. So they're gonna use the marijuana to fund the military. Is that something like that?
The Missouri Veterans Commission.
The military.
Well, yeah, but not the active military. This is the veterans.
Okay.
This is the folks that are not
Right.
deployed.
The former military people.
Yeah, former military.
Okay. So when you get out of the military, you're funded by marijuana.
If this passes,
Okay.
the commission will receive funds. So, good question. Time for a little bit of education. Typically, the Missouri Veterans Commission receives an allocation, if they get any, from the PROPS, Public Safety Committee. I used to sit on appropriations for public safety and corrections. Right, so the PROPS committee has been cut, been all merged in the budget, so they still should be seeking some type of reimbursement through one of the public safety charters. So this would actually carve out their own funding, and not telling people how to vote, but I do know when I sat on that committee, I was actually surprised that the Missouri Veterans Commission was not only reimbursed, but they didn't have no money. Like, it was a gentleman that drove up there and he was asking for like $10,000 or something like that for yearly operation costs, and that was just for gas money. We actually gave them some money, but he was a volunteer. He didn't want anything. He was like, I just want to get back and forth. So this proposal is estimated to generate annual taxes and fees of at least $18 million for state operating costs and veterans programs, and $6 million for local governments. Annual state operating costs are estimated to be $70 million. That annual operating cost, I guess, at the state level would be for creating the new regulations, oversight, but that number would not be validated until we actually create something.
Slush fund for the state.
I don't know. That's what you think? So what do you think? Yes or no on Amendment 2? I can't tell people how to vote.
No, I had to look at that one a little bit more. 'Cause way it-
I will.
I had to
I
look
would say yeah, because it's all like you said. The original one is all clumped in with something else, so they really don't have their own funds, right?
Well, the Missouri Veterans Commission, yes, pretty much. It would increase the funding. It would give them a dedicated funding stream.
Right.
So let me put it that way.
Yeah.
It would definitely give them a dedicated funding stream. Some of the dangers that I see initially in this ballot language is you don't know any breakdowns, and you won't know any breakdowns
until after the fiscal first year.
well until we come back into the General Assembly. Because even though it's a constitutional amendment, this is just for people for understanding. Constitutional amendments we can't mess with. They have to go back to a vote of the people. So if we pass a constitutional amendment on medical marijuana, the legislative body could not say you can't have medical marijuana. But what we do have the ability to do with this language is to draft out the percentages, I believe, of how much is going to go where, and also the regulations for the licensing. So some of the things that you will see different in legislation that is drafted by people in the Capitol as opposed to initiatives, it will have directly where it's going. So we will either do it to the state treasurer, and the state treasurer will be responsible for allocating funds or whatever it is. I don't necessarily see that in this constitutional amendment that's on the ballot, but this is just the ballot language, and I'm just reading the ballot language.
Would it also benefit the VA hospitals?
It should. The program, it should benefit state programs through the Veterans Commission. VA hospital is going to be more federal.
Okay.
Well, it is federal.
Give us an example of the state program.
The Missouri Veterans Commission, just to be honest, and that would be a commission that's supposed to, they volunteer, they help out veterans. We don't have a lot of stuff for vets. So we pass, since I've been there, we pass things like special license plates, etc., that takes a percentage of that license plates and it puts it over there to the Veterans Commission. But I couldn't give you specifics of their programs because a lot of their programs is fed. All right. Constitutional Amendment number 3, and I got breakdowns for all these amendments too once we need to get all the way into the weeds of them. Again, you listening to What's Real Talk, KUAW. The call-in number is area code 816-599-6893. If you're listening to this on my Facebook page, go to the KUAW LPFM 98.5 Facebook page. You're going to have an integrated audio and video experience. Constitutional Amendment number 3. Wipe the sweat, man. It's a lot of work. Shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to allow the use of marijuana for this ain't the same one. Allow the use of marijuana for medical purposes, to create regulations and licensing procedures for marijuana and marijuana facilities, impose I guess I know which one's gonna win. Impose a 15% tax on the retail sale of marijuana, and a tax on the wholesale sale of marijuana flowers and leaves per dry weight ounce of licensed facilities, and to use funds from these taxes to establish and fund a state research institute to conduct research with the purpose of developing cures and treatments for cancer and other incurable diseases and medical conditions. The proposal is estimated to generate annual taxes and fees of $66 million. State government entities estimate initial implementation costs of $186,000 and increased annual operating costs of at least $500,000 a year. So what do you think about this one?
So it's 2 taxes, this tax and the other one.
Well,
So the 4%.
Yes.
15. Was it
14.
I'm not finished. We
Okay.
got another weed one on the ballot too.
So it ain't number the weed ballot then.
Almost.
Almost.
Now,
They just gonna pimp the weed growers.
this is where I break my promise. So I told people I wasn't gonna tell them how to vote. I ain't gonna tell you how to vote. I'm gonna tell you how I vote.
Okay.
So I ain't gonna break the promise.
Yeah.
This one right here creates a drug seizure, right? And I believe that. Let me make sure I'm reading the right one.
A drug seizure.
Caesar.
Seizure. What is that?
Let me make sure I'm reading the right one before I do that. Let me go through all of them and then I'll come back because one of them is an initiative that's being done by somebody that's going to benefit, and in the language that actually has the Brad Bradshaw Amendment on there, which I'm extremely concerned about because it creates an entity that would actually control the licenses, etc. That's not elected, that's outside the government completely.
That's what he was
And they can do what they want. But before I say that, let me make sure 100% is that one. Constitutional Amendment number 4. Do you well y'all good on that one? The 15%, because it goes up to 15% before I jump.
We done went from 4 to 15. What's the next one? 20?
I think so. I can answer that question for you. More people haven't tuned into this good information because what I've observed is that we're quicker, and this is no knock because you have the Chiefs jersey on. No knock.
Come on, man.
But we're
Come on.
quicker to spread Red Friday. We're quicker to spread twerking videos. We're quicker to spread Kanye saying something that's irrelevant to anybody's life than we are to spread information and knowledge. And this is why I believe I'm monotheistic. So before I say this, no, I'm not religious like that. I'm monotheistic. But I believe this is why in the Bible it says, my people shall perish for lack of knowledge. Right? Because 1 and 1 is 2. But if I don't know 1 and 1 is 2, I never understand how to get to a whole. And when we talk about the lack thereof of abuse in our community, it ultimately falls back on our shoulders. Like we started off joking about Trump and Kavanaugh. But in all reality, Trump is in office because we don't participate, and then we block vote. Like I have issues with block voting when it comes to so-called minorities. We give our vote blindly to the Democrats, and then we wonder why we don't have policy changes because we're not involved in the democratic process of creating leverage, creating benefits. Politics is about who gets what, right? It's war without bloodshed, and war is bloody politics. But I believe that's why people aren't spreading it because we're slow to spread positive information. We're quick to spread something negative because we want to see a reaction as opposed to see somebody succeed.
Was that a comment by one of our viewers?
Yeah, that was a comment.
Very good question.
I know.
Good question.
Who was that? Who was that?
Very good question.
Mint Santiago.
That's a very good question.
Good question.
All right, so Constitutional Amendment number 4. Do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution to remove language limiting bingo game advertisement that a court ruled was unenforceable and allow a member of licensed organizations conducting bingo games to participate in the management of bingo games after being a member of the organization for 6 months instead of the current 2 years? I ain't really got no stake in this one.
Why are they messing with the bingo people?
Hey, that was the church people.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've been after bingo for a minute, right? So it's been
There's
some.
really no regulations there with that bingo.
No, it's regulations. It's regulations, but we're talking about a form of gambling, and we're also talking about casinos style things, right?
Right.
So it's been issues with bingos, what they can do, when they can operate, things of this nature. I actually support it. I don't really care if you want to go gamble.
It's your money.
No, man, it's up to you. Proposition B. Ooh, Mike's falling. Excuse me. Proposition B. Do you want the Missouri law to increase? This is one that people should pay attention to too, and we should pay attention to the long-term effects. Do you want the Missouri law to increase the state minimum wage? This is not a constitutional amendment. This is a regular statutory thing that we're voting on. The rest of the stuff I read was constitutional amendments that would amend the Missouri Constitution and it would prohibit the legislative body from altering the language that was voted on. Anything else around we can mess with, but not the language that was voted on. The rest of them are statutory measures. We can do whatever we want with these if they come up there. Do you want to amend Missouri law to increase the state minimum wage to $8.60 per hour with 85 cents per hour increase each year into 2023 when the state minimum wage would be $12 per hour? exempt government employees from the what really exempt government employees from the above increase and increase the penalty for paying employees less than the minimum wage. State and local governments estimate the direct costs or savings from the proposal, but operating costs would increase by an unknown, and I'll explain this here in a minute, will increase by an unknown annual amount that could be significant. The state local government tax revenue could change by an unknown annual amount ranging, dig it, ranging from 2.2 million decrease to a 214 million increase, depending on business decisions. First thoughts. Minimum wage.
Does it need to be rise? Yes, it does. It needs to be increased. I agree with that. You can't live with what people are making today with minimum wage. If businesses don't comply with that, you got your small mom and pop.
They're going to have to comply. State law.
That's what I'm saying. That don't comply, it will hurt them. It's going to run some up under. Doors are going to be locked on some of those instances. But does it need to be increased? Yes, I totally agree with you increasing.
Big T, what you think?
Yeah, it needs to be increased.
Is this the way to do it?
I mean, yeah, everybody need money. But if it's increased, like you said, what about the small businesses?
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt them because most of them can't afford to pay extra money.
I'm
right?
glad you guys are concerned about the small businesses.
Right.
I really am. I'm going to be a little bit cynical, though. Small businesses are small businesses. What about the people that get state subsidies or federal subsidies? Because, see, if we pass the minimum, and I'm not saying not to, because I've been trying to increase the minimum wage since I've been in office, right? But this is something for people to think about. If we pass the minimum wage today on the initiative ballot, and we haven't changed anything else, what does that do to people that are receiving government subsidies? Because it doesn't change. What does that do to health care? Because we haven't changed. And what I mean by we haven't changed, when you look at government access, and I see you said yes, increase. When you look at government access, you're looking at rubrics that are based off of the poverty line. Example, in the city of Kansas City, if you want to use legal aid, you have to be at 125% of the poverty level. So let's say that your wage gets increased, but your food stamps, the amount that you can make to qualify doesn't change, or the restrictions on housing, how much you can make, doesn't change. Then we actually put people in the worst position than we do by trying to help them. And going back to your underlying concern and comment about small businesses should be the breadbone of our economy. We should be doing everything we can to proliferate and grow more small businesses. That way we have a organic economy that can grow and that can be sustained. Now, again, I'm not saying yes or no on the minimum wage. I'm just saying think about the long-term ramifications, because we've been talking about it politically, but they haven't done anything to detangle the government entrapments that we've fought for underneath a lot of these laws that don't let people stair-step themselves out of poverty. And this would be a direct undercut to a lot of stuff, because we're talking about federal guidelines. The feds have nothing to do with what we do in Kansas City. I'll give you a better example of something we did here that doesn't coincide with the law. About a year and a half ago, Kansas City City Council and the mayor, they passed an ordinance that says if you get caught with a ounce of weed or not, you can sign up for a citation, a ticket, and you can take that. Well, the problem with that is, in the state of Missouri, you can have 32 grams, and it's a misdemeanor, right? So that means if I got 28 grams in the city of Kansas City and I sign up for that, it was already a misdemeanor in the state. But when I go sign up for my college funds, they ask me, have I ever been convicted or pled guilty of illegal narcotics? I can't say that I pled because my council passed an ordinance that doesn't coincide with law. I have to say, yes, I pled guilty, which means I'm denied from these access. And again, people should just kind of pay attention to what's going on. I know we got a caller coming in, so I'm going to try to read real quick. Proposition B, do you want the Missouri law? Oh, excuse me. Proposition C, do you want to amend Missouri law to remove state prohibitions on personal use and possession of medical cannabis, marijuana, with a written certification by a physician who treats a patient diagnosed with a qualifying medical condition? State remove state prohibitions on growth, possession, production, and sale of medical marijuana by licensed and regulated facilities and facilities licensed owners and employees. Impose a 2% tax on retail sales of medical marijuana and use funds from this tax for veterans services, drug treatment, early childhood early childhood education, and for public safeties in cities with medical marijuana facilities. So if you don't have a medical marijuana facility in your city, you will not get public safety dollars under Proposition C. State government entities estimate initial and one-time cost of $2.6 million, annual cost of $10 million, and annual revenues of at least $10 million. Local government entities estimate no annual cost and are expected to have at least $150,000 in annual revenues. What do you think about this third Proposition C?
That's a whole bunch in one there.
And we got a caller too.
Yeah, we got
We
a
have a
caller.
caller.
All right, let me jump to the caller real quick.
All right, we got a caller on here talking about the crossroads.
How you
Go
doing?
go
today?
ahead, caller.
Yes, hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I was calling about concerns about my son. I haven't heard from him in a couple of months, and I've been up there a few times to try to visit him, and they were even telling me that I got there too late. I guess it's called ASEG, and he's been in the hole since December of last year. And I just don't, I haven't heard from him in a couple of months, and I'm just concerned. He hasn't called me or written me.
All right, did you just contact me on social media like a couple days ago?
Hello?
Yeah, did you just contact me on social media like a couple days ago?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
All right, so your last name starts with a C.
About a week ago.
Does your last name start with a C?
No.
Okay. Okay, now I was just trying to figure out if I actually communicated with you or not. So I know we got to condense it because we got to get off the.
No, I'm just telling you to get close to the mic.
I'll get closer to my. Okay, so a couple of things. Administrative is nothing but a pretty word for the hoe. So what Department of Corrections has been doing here, they've been putting people in the hole, and then they've been saying they got them in administrative because it's certain federal restrictions of keeping people in the hole for that long. As far as lack of phone conversations, he should be having the ability to communicate now. If you have not sent me an email, please send me an email with all of his contact info. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I am a little bit behind in contacting people because I don't have an assistant in my office currently right now. So I'm doing everything from the emails to trying to schedule my calendar and all that good stuff myself right now. So I am a little bit behind. But if you send me an email, I can send it over to the liaison for the Department of Corrections, and I can start a folder on them. And what I mean by a folder, everybody that I've contacted or have contacted me so far, we're creating a workable list, and I'm also requiring weekly updates on these individuals that I met with to ensure that there's no retaliation being done at the correctional facility, etc. And then I can keep you updated with what we got going on too, because I'm sending out updates from the office of people that have actually contacted me. Yes, ma'am. Brandon.Ellington@house.mo.gov. .mo.gov. And make sure you put his identification number in there too, because that's the quickest way for me to pull him up. And then I'll be keeping you updated. But again, I do have a little bit of lapse in my office, so it's not moving as quick as I'm used to. But I will keep you updated with what's going on.
Okay, I appreciate it.
No problem.
More than welcome.
And then we got Charles Johnson has been extremely vital in there. You can contact him too.
That area code 816-529-8166 or cj.iambrybrother'skeeper@gmail.com.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Now we can actually cut it off. Yeah, we can actually cut it off. Yeah, yeah, we can actually. was Proposition C, impose a 2% tax on retail sales of medical marijuana. Use the funds from this tax for veteran services, drug court, early childhood education, and public safeties in cities with medical marijuana facilities. What do you think, man? We weed heavy this year.
Yeah, we very weed heavy this year. Sound like Missouri going to pass some weed around here. If it ain't nowhere but around the table, we gonna pass some weed somewhere.
Crazy.
Oh,
I don't know, Brandon. That was one. That was a whole bunch in one there. That was a whole bunch in one.
all right, well, let me kind of give you a little breakdown on Proposition C, just because that's the first one I pulled up. And I thank Miss E because she just hit me with something that I hadn't said. Thank you. We have a job fair coming up this Thursday, August the 11th. I was about to say October. No, I did say August. October, yeah, I said August. The last one was in August.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, last one was in August. October 11th, 10 to 2 p.m. at the Robert J. Mulhart Center. This job fair is targeting folks with felonies, but if you don't have a felon, come out,
Still
get you a
welcome.
job anyway. Organize this with Mr. York Wilson, and we're actually dedicated to trying to provide as many opportunities of people that's been marginalized by the system and by black marks. So again, please come out Thursday, October the 11th, 10 to 2 p.m. Robert J. Mulhart Center. That's off of 31st, next to Purcell. If you don't know where that's at, we have over 20-something employees, and all the employees are willing to hire folks with felony records. All right, so I'm going to give you a little bit of breakdown on number C, because it's the first one I got up in front of me, and it's the last one I just read. Proposition C is a third of three separate measures seeking to legalize marijuana for medical use that will appear on the November 6th statewide ballot. It was placed before voters via initiative petition organized by a St. Louis-based lobbying group under the Campaign Committee Missouri's for Patient Care. Unlike the other two marijuana measures which seek to amend Missouri Constitution, Prop C would only change state law. In addition to legalizing marijuana for medical purposes, it would also establish how the manufacture, distribution, and sale of marijuana is regulated and taxed. Let me see. As a statutory change, the General Assembly could make, and again, this is what I was explaining earlier. As a statutory change, the General Assembly could make changes to Prop C language at any time without going back to the voters for their approval. This is a key difference from the two medical marijuana constitutional amendments, which, if ratified, could only be changed by asking voters to ratify another constitutional amendment. The advantage of putting medical marijuana regulations into statute is lawmakers can easily and quickly make changes if flaws are discovered. But and this will go to everything, right? So this would go to the access, because in one of the constitutional amendments, it talks about the conditions.
Yeah, right.
So we wouldn't be able to change those conditions.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to add to the conditions.
Okay.
Right. The only way we'd be able to add to them is through a constitutional amendment that has to be voted on everybody. So meaning, let's say I'm a rep. I'll file a HJR. If I get that HJR passed out of the House, out of the Senate, then it would come to the voters, and then the voters would have to vote on it. If they ratify it, then it'd be implemented that following year.
That's
Okay.
if it passes out.
Yeah,
That's
if
it.
it passes.
Yeah,
No,
passes.
if it passes out. As with the other two medical marijuana proposals, Amendment 2 and Amendment 3, the language of Prop C is quite expansive and detailed. Unlike the others, which each house all regulation of medical marijuana in a single state agency, Prop C will split those duties between two agencies. The Department of Health and Senior Services would have oversight. And this was going to what I was saying about not knowing where the money was going. So Prop C actually gives you that. Where was I at? Including setting, we'll go to Health and Senior Services would have oversight over the medical aspects of medical marijuana, including setting prescription practices for doctors and ensuring medical marijuana cards qualifying patients. The remaining regulatory authority would be vested in the State Division of Alcohol and Tobacco Control, which is part of the Missouri Department of Public Safety.
So drug companies are gonna make a lot of money, right?
Well, it depends. It depends on how it's regulated. Now, this has been part of the contentious aspect of the state. So I have a bill that if I pass my bill, it would give us the exact same law that's in Washington, D.C. So in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, marijuana is legal and not,
Depends on what you're buying.
or how you transmit it.
How you sell it.
Yeah, which is funny to me. So in Washington, D.C.,
I sell you a T-shirt.
yes, you can literally go in the store. You can buy what would typically be $1 T-shirt for a price of an ounce of marijuana, and you will walk out with a gift of an ounce of marijuana and your $1 T-shirt,
And a T-shirt.
right? So, or
On the T-shirt, it says what? I support marijuana.
marijuana, yeah. Or, and this is something that I found funny, and not funny but funny ironic, and when I mean funny ironic, America has a way of showing people their place in what we think of it. So when I was in DC, I ran into an individual and he was like, "Man, we got apps." I was like, "What do you mean you got apps?" He's like, "You can hit an app and they can drive it to you." And I looked at him and I was like, "Hey, look here, boy." I said, "Where I'm from, that would be a drug sale." He was like, No, you got it wrong, man. They're not selling you anything, they driving." I was like, "I hear that." But I know a whole bunch of people that would have loved to tell the officer when they got pulled over, and the DA, I wasn't selling them this. I was just driving it to him and he was paying me for the gas. And I say this to be cynical because Washington, D.C. is our nation capital, right? Right? They supposed to be creating regulations and laws that are beneficial to everybody. And if it works in D.C., why are people still going to jail in states where it hasn't been legalized? Because all it takes is a descheduling from the federal government, and we don't have to worry about all these initiatives. And another thing people should be concerned about with the medical aspects, and all three amendments that we have, the two constitutionals and the Prop C, they all create medical statutory cards, right? You know what's been happening in states that have medical marijuana?
What's that, tracking device?
Not, well, almost. So if you in a state that has legalized medical marijuana and you a medical marijuana card, you have to give up your guns.
Wow, I did hear something like that. Yeah, I did hear something like that.
Yeah,
You
'cause-
couldn't have both.
Well, if you're not stable enough to,
Right. Yeah, I
well,
did hear both.
if you need a substance to keep yourself stable, then you're probably not stable enough to have
You
a gun.
right?
Yeah,
Right. Wow,
man.
man. While we own some of those things, don't forget the utility thing that we're experiencing here in the state of Missouri right now.
But the utility thing that goes back to the original bill that I read when they said they wasn't receiving no more state incentives.
Yes.
That goes back to that too.
Okay.
So that one that I read where we wasn't getting no more state. So let me hit you with Prop D.
Okay. No more state funding.
Because
for
we
it.
still got some more stuff on here. So the Missouri law be amended to fund Missouri state law enforcement by increasing the motor fuel tax by 2 1/2 cents per gallon. I love it when I have language like that. By 2 1/2 cents per gallon annually for 4 years beginning July 1st, 2009, except Special Olympics, Paralympics, and Olympic prizes from state taxes to establish the emergency state freight bottleneck. Dude, they was
What?
creative.
I don't know what
Emergency state freight bottleneck fund.
What is that?
What is that?
A name that somebody was bored and came up with.
Bottleneck.
The Emergency State Freight Bottleneck Fund. If passed, this measure would generate at least $288 million annually in the state road fund to provide the funding for Missouri state law enforcement and $123 annually for local governments.
So 2.5 cents,
I'm gonna give you a backdrop on it.
and you get what for 2.5 cents? Or what are they?
You increase your fuel tax.
Fuel tax.
So for the past several years, this goes back to Governor Nixon when Nixon was in office.
Uh-huh.
We've been talking about increasing the fuel tax. Now, I've been consistently no, even though I know we need new roads and all that good stuff, I don't believe in no new taxes.
And ain't other taxes?
Right. So I've been consistently opposed to increasing the taxes just to increase the taxes. The exemption for the Special Olympics, the Paralympics, and Olympic prizes, that came from a representative that had a standalone bill that would exempt members that have won people that have won Olympic prizes from state taxation, right? The taxation is kind of low. Ain't that many people that win. I actually supported her on the bill. I did, just because like if you win, why give up your winnings because you won? You
yeah,
shouldn't.
right,
I got issues
right.
with taxes
Right.
altogether.
Right.
So I actually support her on that. But that's where this comes from. A good example in Kansas City will be the bridge that the city council and the mayor was complaining about needed to be fixed. That goes in North Kansas City.
Buckle bit-
That they
the
were
buck.
saying, yeah, that they were
Yeah.
saying the state wasn't gonna
Right,
fix.
right.
Well, technically, the state responsible for bridges. I mean, is responsible for highways, and that
Right.
bridge is on
It's
the
a highway,
highway.
right.
So technically, that's the state, but the state's broke because see, I work with a lot of Republicans, and this is a direct bash that's been cutting taxes for large corporations while we've been decreasing the education, the foundation formula. We've been reworking that. We've been cutting state tax credits for low income housing and utilities and all this
Everything.
other stuff that people benefit for, so we can guarantee that companies like KCP&L and Ameren can charge an unrestricted 3% and 4% rate increase. But I'm not bitter, right?
And on top of that, you can go up to another 3%.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I mean
yeah,
that's the unrestricted.
yeah,
that's
that's
the
yeah,
guarantee.
yeah.
That's not what we got to go in front of the PSC, the Public Service Commission, to get an increase. That's what
It's
your state
done.
reps and your senators voted on,
Right.
because in this case, lobbyists ran the day and they got what they wanted,
wanted.
and what they wanted was to be able to. We on the conscious radio. What they wanted was to be able to do over people. So Proposition D, that's the Missouri Highway Tax Fund. I think we have. Do we have anything else on this one? We also have the Jackson County Charter. Now I was able to give you details on the state stuff, and I can give you more details on the state stuff. I can't really give you a lot of details on this, except for the fact that it is a power grab that we're seeing at Jackson County. I'm not a county legislator, but I do understand from a political observation standpoint what's popping. Shall sections 6, 12, 13, 15, and 16 of Article 2 and Section 6 of Article 3 of the Jackson County Charter adopted by vote on November 3rd, 1970, as amended in public vote on August 8, 1978, April 2nd, 1985, November 4th, 1986, August 2nd, 1994, and August 3rd, 2010, be amended in various sections to provide term limits for members of the county legislature, to eliminate the county's executive power to veto an ordinance passed by the legislature, and submit a charter amendment to the voters to eliminate the county's executive's power of line item veto for portions of an apportionation ordinance, to modify the specific circumstances under which members of the county legislature shall forfeit office, to provide salary increases to members of the county legislature, to grant the county legislature the power to disapprove the county's executive's appointment of acting or interim department directors. And cut a long story short.
Yeah.
Question 1, and I don't care where you at on this, I'm just telling you the real. Question 1 is a power grab to take all power from the county executive.
Right.
So my question would be,
Why having?
what's the point?
What's
the point of having a county executive
And he don't have no
that
power.
can't veto stuff? So that would be tending it to us in the legislative body, doing whatever we want, sending it over to the governor and be like, hey man, you can't veto this.
Yeah.
Right.
So when we got something that's not fiscally balanced or fiscally sound, executive branch can't veto this. When you got an appointee that we don't like, don't matter. We run everything. So what's the point of having an executive, right? The breakdown of the supposed separations of power in government is to ensure that we don't have demigods like what we're seeing at the federal level. At the federal level, we're seeing a Republican-controlled Senate doing whatever the president wants out of political fear. Well, this would be the reverse. This would be taking away all the power out of the executive and giving it to the legislative body, because the legislative body in this instance doesn't like the county exec.
And that's all that's geared towards.
Because everything in here could be done through
Without
votes. If
Yeah.
you're talking about you want to increase the pay of county workers,
put it on the ballot.
dude, that's what. No, you don't even have to do it on the ballot. That's what they're elected for. You vote that in the chambers if you want to increase the
Oh,
pay
okay.
of county legislators. If you want to line item vetoes, what a line item veto is, that's a specific line item of allocation of dollars. Well, we're saying that we don't want the exec to be able to do that. So if I'm a county legislator and I want to pay my friend Uncle Joe Buck $213,000 of county
Can't nobody
dollars,
stop me.
yeah, you can. You
Can't
can.
nobody stop
Come
me.
on, man. This
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
This right here is politics at its worst. And again, I'm not on the county, but I am knocking everybody on the county that's been promoting and sponsoring something like this. I don't care if you like county exec Frank White or not. To try to castrate the office for political games shows that you have no political morals. Question two.
I like how you said that, my brother.
I'm trying to be. I'm
I
trying
like
to
how
be nice.
you said that.
Oh, gotta get. All right, let me read this one. I know we gotta get ready to go. Question two. Shall Article 3 of the Jackson County Charter adopted by vote on there's a lot of dates. November 3rd, 1970, as amended in public vote on August 8th, 1978, April 2nd, 1985, November 4th, 1986, August 2nd, 1994, and August 3rd, 2010 be amended in various sections to provide term limits for county executives. Really? And to set out specific circumstances for which the county executive shall forfeit or restrict the power of the county executive to employ experts, consultants. Now, this is directly after the dude that works in his office. To
Yeah.
require the county executive to notify the county. So you mean to tell me we ain't got nothing better to do but to put an amendment on here for term limits for a county executive? Really?
Really? Really?
Straight up. This is what we doing.
Really?
Now, my understanding of term limits, they're extremely bad. And I say this because since I've been in office, I came in there with people that were the first generation of term limits. Before I got in office, I thought term limits was there to make sure people don't just sit in office, but that's what voters are there for. You're supposed to vote somebody out if they're not doing the job. What I've seen since I've been in office at the legislative body is when I came there, it was folks that had more knowledge, information, and understanding than I have. Now I'm considered a senior member because I've been there longer than the majority of the people that I work with, and this is scary because I know things that they don't know, and I know when I'm gone, nobody's gonna know these things, and I know I don't know as much as the person that was there before I got there, right? So that means
Right.
general institutional knowledge is dissipating.
Yes.
So the rules, regulations, and the way things operate, there's certain premises of power of my office that I know because I knew old reps that new reps don't even know they can do.
Right.
So with that, you've been listening to What's Real Talk 98.5. Man, I can talk fast. I could actually be an auctioneer. You've been
Job
listening
fair,
to
job fair.
KUAW 98.5. The job fair is October the 11th, 10 to 2 p.m. The Robert J. Moore Center.
It's been a good day.
That's
y'all.
been real.
Thank Kansas City.
And we also want to thank Thurman Davis, Tara Smith,
Yes.
Joseph Thomas, Roach Ellington,
Yes.
David Bentley, Mela Diamond, O.E. Black, Forrest Tyson. We thank you all for listening. Thank you very much.